See. Welcome back to Black Republican Black. Listen, dude, I forgot.
A couple of weeks.
Oh
right?
my goodness, I haven't done this in a while. Welcome to Black Republican Black Democrat. I'm Jamar Nelson.
I'm A.K. Kamara, the Republican. And
Well, welcome. Oh, well, you know, I don't. That's how long we've been going.
Hey, man, it's been 2 weeks, bro.
That your party, the smart one.
I said I'm the smart.
Oh.
Let's be clarifying.
Okay. Okay. We've got a jam-packed show of talking to do. 2 weeks feels like
2 weeks,
man. 2 weeks feels like a whole month.
It was a long time.
No
man.
kidding, though. You know, welcome.
Yeah, man. I feel good.
You feel rejuvenated.
I feel rejuvenated. You know, we can get into it in a second, but yeah, you know, having 14 days of quarantine, you know, sometimes good for the soul.
So he's giving you a hint already as to why we were on a slight hiatus. You had COVID.
I did. Yep.
And we obviously practice safety and canceled 2 shows just to make sure that everyone was safe. You were safe, and you and your wife, and she didn't contract it, right?
No, she did.
She did contract it.
Yeah, she got it from me, man.
She did. You bastard! You gave her COVID.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
We are those that statistical information that came out just yesterday in the Star Tribune. Then in the month of August, out of the 12,000 or so positive COVID cases, about 4,000 of them have been breakthrough cases of people that were fully vaccinated. 2 of them were my wife and I, because we both got tested. So.
And you guys you participated in a test study too, as well, right?
Yeah. I always try and study this information as much as possible, and I know that there's COVID studies out there, and so I enrolled in one through the University of Minnesota for people that are COVID positive. It's great. It's called Minnesota COVID Out, and you can go to the U of M Twin Cities if you yourself have tested positive. It's always good to be able to give information and give that data, but basically it allows you to enroll, and they can basically find out if certain drugs help with symptoms. And so some of the drugs that they gave, you know, it's a double blind, so they don't know. I don't know 100% sure if the pills that I were taking, if they're actual pills of the actual drug or not. But it's kind of cool because ivermectin, also metformin, which is a diabetic drug, and then there's the last one that starts with the F that I can never remember. So it's possible that I took one of those 3, all 3 of those 3. But yeah, man, just, you know, science and data, and they compensate you. So if you're watching and you've tested positive, just give back to society, man.
Well, I think a big misnomer is people think that once you're vaccinated that you can't get the COVID.
Sure.
And that's not fact. And no one has, Dr. Fauci or anyone has said that. If people are saying that is untrue, it just lessens the chances of you going to the hospital or you dying, especially when it comes to black folks who have underlying conditions, diabetes, hypertension, heart issues, lupus, things of that nature. COVID, if you catch COVID, you know, without being vaccinated, then you're one of those. You're probably on the higher scale of being hospitalized and maybe being put on a respirator. It makes it a little harder for you to fight COVID versus being vaccinated, when it lessens the chances of you dying for sure. And well, there has been people dying, but again, those cases that folks have died, they also had underlying conditions. So they didn't just die from contracting COVID; they also had an underlying condition, which we'll be talking about that too with our guests.
You know,
well.
I think the way that I look at it, just to be honest, I'm a guy that I like science, I like data, but I also don't like being lied to or misled or mischaracterized or made to feel like I can't make a decision on my own. And I think that if you actually look at the science and the data, vaccines, in my personal opinion, are cool science. And I think that The things that President Trump did with Operation Warp Speed, with the scientific community that already existed, that have been hoping and waiting that we can get rid of some of this red tape so they can get more products to market at a faster and quicker pace. Those are good things. And I think that if you actually follow the science and the data, you would understand that there is no such thing as a curing of a virus, like stopping it 100%. And that's one of my biggest frustrations that we'll talk about later, is that it creates this scenario, which we have right now, where there are people that are being led down to believe that there's microchips and weird things in the vaccines. And I think that it comes because of the way that the vaccines, I think, were pushed in the wrong way.
And pure, simple mistrust of government.
And mistrust of
pure,
government.
Pure, simple mistrust of government.
100%. And so for me, I think that you talk to your doctor. If your doctor thinks you're a good candidate and you think it's a good decision, go and get vaccinated. I got vaccinated because I thought it was a good decision for me. My wife also thought it was a good decision for her, and that's what we did. But I never was under the illusion that I had a 100% Teflon protection against catching COVID. I still practice good hand hygiene, because especially that people are out and about and doing things, but the truth is that what the science shows us is that it does reduce those, the more severe symptoms for a lot of folks, but it doesn't mean that you won't. It doesn't mean that you won't die either, but it does reduce based off of the data that's came out. Again, I'm not trying to sit here and saying that everybody should get vaccinated. You might say that. I think you should talk to your doctor if you think you're a good candidate, and that's what you do. But yeah, my whole thing is just an idea that it shows the reality that exists. And that's why personally, I'm against vaccine mandates, because how can you force this to happen if you are knowing that you're going to have breakthrough cases? So why would I force someone to have to get it when I know that they're going to do it? Because then you get into a question of forcing medical decisions on people, and I don't think you should do that.
Well, again, now you're talking about a couple of different things. Because again, I love how
this will go into.
But I love how Republicans say that, but then you want to make judgment and pass laws on a woman's body. Give me the hell a break.
Because we care about the child.
No, there's a person that carries the child. So I can't stand how you guys talk about how government shouldn't mandate something. Yet government should mandate that a woman doesn't have choice of her body. But let's pay some bills.
What Republicans
a woman's choice is what women should have their own choice. Again, we talked about that a couple of weeks ago. Y'all love government. When you love government, then you hate it. Government should be out of the business.
The child can't make the decision. That's what our position is.
A woman should have a right to choose.
The woman can make a decision about her body. She has a right to choose,
and government should not be placing any laws on her body. How many laws are like this on a man's body?
But a man doesn't carry a child. We care about the child.
He makes the child, though, right?
You're focusing on the child. You're not focusing on the child.
I asked you a question. How many laws, which I guess, again, there you go, being like Lionel Richie, dancing on the facility. The answer would be none, AK.
Oh, there are. What? Some men have been court ordered to get snipped and all these different types of things.
Again, so you want to be that technical. So I guess I got to ask a bit. What national laws, what federal laws are like this against? Actually, see, that's you.
Men can't carry a child. Man.
I asked you again, bro. What laws are like this, are stringent on a man's body? The answer would be none.
Vaccines.
There would be none.
Vaccines.
And so again, I don't get how you don't want government to require people to do something, but it's okay for government to require a woman to not have abortion, get sued. We'll talk about that. Let's pay some bills, because boy, y'all kill me. Oh my God, y'all kill me.
So when you're watching the show maybe later, and you're feeling thirsty, and you live anywhere in the greater Minneapolis area, just head on down to the Weber Mart and get yourself something nice and wet to drink. Pick up some eggs,
water,
get some water, right? Some diapers, get some, the necessities for living.
That's right. The Weber Mart.
Weber Mart.
Yeah, and then if you're a little hungry, and you might not have caught the Weber Mart, and then you might want some vittles.
Or maybe you live over, close on St. Paul side.
What would you go do?
I would head over to the Egg Roll Queen.
The Egg Roll Queen?
Egg Roll Queen.
Okay.
Or give them a call. They have specialty egg rolls. They're gigantic egg rolls. They have traditional egg rolls, but they're It's amazing. So head on over to Egg Roll Queen. Go find them wherever you can, whether they're in their food truck or they're in their brick and mortar store. But give the Egg Roll Queen a call.
And now, if you don't catch the show now, streaming live like it is, or you haven't started your watch party so you can have your friends watch and, please send those questions in, where could you catch the show later on or tomorrow?
So if you head over to anchor.fm/BRBD, that's the easiest way to then follow us on your favorite podcast platform. You head over to, again, anchor.fm/BRBD, and you'll be able to get linked up whether you're using Spotify or you're using iTunes, you're using Google Podcasts. That's the best way to actually get linked directly to this page, to this podcast.
And we want to thank you for going to patreon.com/BRBD, patreon.com/BRBD. We're working our asses off. We were off, literally, but we are absolutely trying to have great content for those that contribute, after shows or post shows, with our most exciting guests that we have on here. So, speaking of most exciting guests, we do have an exciting guest. This is election season, and actually, this kicks off election season.
Yeah.
Because
it feels like it just got done, but that's the
which it did 7 months ago.
I
mean, and then you're never out of it, right? Then we have an election coming up this year, and then next year. So the next couple of years, we're busy, and so now candidates are starting to announce that they are running for governor, and so the field for Republicans is already getting a little bit packed.
Yep.
We had. Gazelka-fish, or
Gazelka.
Paul Gazelka, he resigned today, and he hasn't announced his run for governor, but that's obviously why he resigned. And Michelle Benson, who I'm working very hard to get her on, is also, she announced her. If she hasn't, I'm sorry.
No, she did.
Okay, because I was going to say spoiler alert, she's also announced her bid for Minnesota governor. And so tonight's guest already announced his candidacy for governor and has had plenty of social media buzz about his candidacy. And so welcome tonight, Dr. Scott Jensen, candidate for Minnesota governor. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Man, it's a pleasure to have you. I started seeing, like I said, your social media I started seeing your posts and people talk about you. And so Jeremy Munson is a big fan of yours. And so I heard you on their podcast. And so I said, I got to have this guy on. So, strap yourself in and let's get to it. You got, as I was talking about, the field for Republicans is getting a little crowded already. But right now, you guys aren't in a great favor here in the state. You've had a chair recently resign. Jennifer Carnahan resigned as Minnesota GOP state chair under a cloud of controversy. And I'll say, full disclosure, I don't think that she should have resigned due to the fact that she was associated with a creep like Eric Lazaro. I don't think that Eric, whatever his name is. Thank you, though. I thought that she should have resigned because she lost the party. Statewide seats, she's not winning. And now there's not a lot of money. I just found there's not a lot of money in the party. She's not friendly. She's not accessible. She didn't advance minorities in the party. She ran help. She didn't stop inept candidates. With all that happening now, Dr. Jensen, how in the hell do you expect to win?
Well, I've always been a bit of a naive optimist rather than a jaded cynic. And I think what you're going to see out of the MNGOP is you're going to see a little bit more tendency to focus on the values and the conservative convictions that should elevate the party. So I think you're going to see an emphasis on trying to avoid personalities over the next 14 months. So I think we'll try to get our house in order as fast as possible. And then I think we're going to talk about things like our commitment to faith and family and freedom, the wisdom of the founding fathers, limited government, lower taxes, protection of life from beginning to end, I apologize for my voice.
No,
Makes it
no, you're
worse.
good. You know,
But I think that's going to be the bright side of this, is that we're going to stay away from personalities. We're going to try to do probably three things. One, articulate our convictions. Two, raise money. Three, elect conservative candidates. And at the end of the day, that's really the mission of the MNGOP anyway.
well, but my thing is, again, it's time to elect a chair that really encompasses a big tent. If you're running for governor, you're elected governor. I don't know what relationships you have with minority leaders. To me, that's utterly important. So, what relationships do you have with? Because I mean, it's naive for any Republican to think that he or she can win governor if they don't have Minneapolis, St. Paul, and those surrounding suburbs, which are heavily populated of lower income and minorities. And Republicans don't even make an effort to build relationships with those folks. So again, you can look at even how Trump won or lost the state, but won up 87 counties of 89. Look at what the AG did. He didn't do as well as Ruhlman, so he did fairly well, but he didn't need to because he has the two big cities and surrounding areas. Those relationships are important. They have to be fostered. Who do you have relationships with that you can call on right now that bring you into North Minneapolis or some part of South Minneapolis that can help you win? If you don't have black or minority votes, you guys aren't going to win. And let's keep it real, you don't have it right now.
I think you make a great point. I think the Republican Party has failed to throw a bigger tent. And I think that if they're going to do better in the future, they're going to have to focus on not talking at millennials and Gen Zs. They've got to invite them to the table, and they've got to listen. And they've got to ask them, what do you see as some potential solutions for our problems? I think we have to do more than pay lip service to the minorities, whether you're talking about blacks or Hispanics, Hmongs, Somalis. I don't think that I'm at ease sharing specific names, but over the last 5 months, I've diligently worked to get into North Minneapolis, Northeast Minneapolis, North St. Paul, South St. Paul, and build relationships so that I do have phone numbers where I can call someone and say, hey, what do you think we should do here? I think I've developed some quasi-friendships.
Well, but let me stop you here, Doc. Because that makes a difference. If you're not willing to drop names, then that tells me that you don't really have those relationships. I don't see you in North Minneapolis. I'm incredibly connected in politics, especially in the Democratic circles and minority circles. I haven't seen you or any other Republican, South Side, North Side, Northeast. So I find it incredibly hard to believe that you have these relationships, that you fostered these relationships that you're not willing to name. Where have you been? So I don't get how do you. So what you're doing now is kind of you're doing the lip service because you're not being specific as to who do you know that you can say I have a relationship with Reverend such and such.
Okay.
Or
well, I'll jump in. I mean. And I hope that I don't offend somebody by mentioning that.
We just want to.
But I can easily call Reverend Tim Christopher and say, Tim, we got together for a couple hours. My wife and I went up and spent a couple hours in his church. We plan on worshiping at his church, but I wasn't interested in doing when they were being masked. And he's introduced me to some of his colleagues, and we've had lunch and done that. I've been with Tu Fong, with the Hmong community, and some of his family and colleagues. And with the Somali community, I spent half a day meeting them, talking with them at the issues, going out to lunch, and they connected me with many of their Ethiopian friends. I have a lot of Hispanic friends in the southwestern part of the Twin Cities area. As a physician, I used to be the head of the emergency room in St. Peter, and St. Peter has a large core group of Somalis, so I had a chance to meet people there. So I think that we're still 14 months short of the election, and you've got to walk before you can run.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that I've been slowly trying to build those things. The first 6 months of a campaign, I think there's so many things you try to do. One is you try to find resources that you can reach out to and call, and I think I've tried to do that. You try to do fundraising. And I believe that you have to get those infrastructure pieces in place, like your social media, your website. You've got to build your team, your kitchen cabinet. And I'm a full-time family doc as well. So I continue to see patients full-time and do surgeries. So I think with what we've done in the first 6 months, having built up an email team list of 75,000 people and having Facebook followers of 400,000 and having a Twitter that is 5-10 times larger than any of the other legislators in the Senate. I think we've done a lot of that necessary infrastructure work, but we definitely need to do exactly what you said. We need to stretch our reach. We need to get out there, and I've been to Farm Fest in Redwood Falls. We need to talk to farmers and let them know that they belong with Republicans. Many of the convictions of farmers are very much in line with the conservative convictions of small business people. I think that labor is asking themselves, are we really getting from the Democrats what we've been promised? Are they really improving our lives? And so we're out there talking to labor unions more and more. And then, as I mentioned, we need to get in front of those minorities, build relationships that somehow can focus on trust so that it doesn't feel like we're going to pay attention for a few months until we get the chunk of votes we want, and then out of sight, out of mind. That's not the kind of person I am, but I could certainly understand why people would think that I would be the same as anyone else has been. So I just have to go prove myself to be different, and I intend to fully do that.
You know what? I like that, and so you're going to find a lot of pushback, and I like that, because that's what I mean when you, and I do know the people that you name. So when I hear those names, then, and I know Tim, he's not been on the show yet, but good big gun enthusiast, and he is active in the community. So those are important relationships.
Yeah, you know, one of the things for me when we talk about Carnahan, right, and talking about what the, you know, what that does to the MNGOP, and you know, you're running, obviously right now you're running to be the GOP, the guy that's on the ticket, right? When the general election comes, you want to be able to be the person that says, Republican governor, here we go, and I think that. Is someone that has been in party politics for, you know, since 2006. You know, I know Jennifer Carnahan. I wouldn't call her a friend necessarily, but I have interacted with her back when she was running for state senator is when I first met her. And, you know, I've had real candid conversations with her about a bunch of different things. And personally, I'm against, you know, what Jamar said about her resigning over what the issues were. I think that she ran a very, very poor operation, and I know people that on the executive committee.
I agree with you.
I have really good friends on the executive committee. Bobby Benson, he is probably one of my best friends. We've, you know. We're just homies. We hang out all the time, and he and I, we would talk. You know, when all the stuff was coming out, and I was like, man, like, you know, he called me, and I don't want to disclose exactly what we talked about, but you know, at the end of it, he was like, "Do you think I'm a good person?" That's what he asked me, and I said, "Absolutely, man. You're one of, you know, you are honest, you are straightforward." And he's like, "Good, because there are people that are basically telling me that I'm a bad person because of what I'm standing up for. I'm standing up that, you know, that the way that she ran things and the things that she did or didn't know and the pressure that she put on people, using non-disclosure agreements and all these kind of things to basically silence dissent." And he's like, you know, put all of that and take the Anton Lazaro stuff and let's push that over to the side and say, we don't know what she knew about Anton Lazaro. Let's push that off on the side, but let's talk about how she ran things. And so to bring this back to, you know, how this can relate, and a question that I have for you is that you're running, and yes, if you win governor, you're governor of all Minnesotans, but the party is, I think, going to have a very tough time. You know, whoever becomes our next chair, and getting over that. How do you try and you can't, you know, basically dump on the grassroots activists because you need them if you're seeking the endorsement. So you have to find a way to be able to say, hey, grassroots activists, here I am. We need to get the party back in, you know, where it needs to go, but you're not running to be the chair of the Republican Party. You're running to be governor in the state of Minnesota. You just happen to have conservative values, and as a conservative, you know, you want the Republicans' endorsement, and you want to be able to be on that. So for you, you know, how have you tried to navigate kind of through this? What's going on when it comes to Carnahan and maybe the mistrust that people are going to have with the MNGOP or Republican in Minnesota type of label, you know?
My comments during the time that Jennifer Carnahan was, so to speak, on the hot seat, focused predominantly on the culture of the organization, its ability to meet or not meet its mission of raising funds, elevating values, in electing candidates who lived out those values. I believe the comment that I was probably most quoted on was, I said, leading is hard, but knowing when it's no longer time for you to lead is maybe even harder.
Sure.
And I think that ultimately the decision was made that she had provided energy and support and accomplished certain things while she was there. And so she stepped down. I think the next person in will once again put their imprint on the organization. And as they do, there'll be positives and negatives, just as there almost always is with leading. But I think that the party's going to get its house in order fairly quickly. And I think by the time we're at Thanksgiving, we're going to have 12 months before the election. And I think it's going to be plenty of time to have a robust discussion on multiple issues, whether you're talking about school choice, public safety, secure elections, spending, Second Amendment rights, science over political science. And then ultimately, people really want to talk about freedom, because I think there's Democrats and Republicans, independents, any party you talk about, people are concerned about that issue of individual liberties. Some people feel like Governor Walz went too far in terms of expanding government and telling 3-year-olds to wear masks. Other people might say that he hit the mark. And I think that all people want to have a conversation regarding those individual liberties. And to me, that's the bright spot about the next 12 months, is that I think that there's an awareness that we've been too willing to jump from disagreement straight to contempt without having a conversation. And that's part of the reason why I was intrigued and excited about spending time with the two of you, because I don't want this thing sugar-coated. I just wanted to trend.
You don't get that here.
Jamar, I'm picking up on that. I am getting what you're putting down.
You don't get that here. So let me ask you, because I don't get the longest time with you, and I got so many questions for you and topics. So just kind of finish this. Basically, I didn't hear it. Do you think that she did a good enough job?
A good enough job to do what?
Do you think she did it? Was she a good leader? I mean, did she get enough candidates elected? Did she, you said, what did you say, electing candidates, did she raise money? No. How about, what was the third one about the party and...
elevate convictions and elect candidates.
Did she do any of those?
Yes, I think she did. I think if you look at her track record, she inherited a mess. We had a huge debt as the Republican Party.
Yeah.
Now, we don't have a lot of money right now.
True.
But we're not $1 million in the red.
That's right.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
We held the Senate. And that's a good thing.
That wasn't because of her.
We picked but I mean, at some point in time, you're going to blame things on people.
Well, she's the head coach. You want to give her credit? Okay, yeah. All right.
And I think you asked me what was done under her watch, and then I think we picked up the Michelle Fischbach CD7. So I think in the immediate aftermath of things, sometimes the criticism is sharpest, and then once things calm down, I mean, President Trump, if you look at what people are going to say about him, we won't know what the historians are going to write until we've had a decade or two pass. But it may well be that people will, once the energy and the fuming drops off, we might see people say, gee, on regulations, there was a reduction of them. There was a tax bill of 2017 that doubled the standard exemption for a lot of middle-class folks, which is good. There might be other things like he was transparent.
Oh!
And we might see that
Who?
President Trump, I think he was pretty transparent.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I mean, he didn't keep a lot of things hidden.
Okay.
You're never going to convince this guy on anything about Trump.
He didn't keep a lot of things hidden.
He has those Trump-covered, I should say, like Biden rose-colored glasses.
How about the truth-colored rose-colored glasses? Come on. This guy was transparent. Doctor, you've got your white robe is quite more transparent than Donald Trump was. So let's advance, because we're gonna talk Trump. We're definitely gonna talk that. Let's just go to the next topic. Afghanistan is what's on everyone's lips, right? It's September 1st. Yesterday was the last official day that America was at war. We've been at war for 20 years. There's what I was reading today, about 200 Americans left there. But a lot of them have dual citizenship. And if they want to get out, they obviously will help them get out.
You're not trying to apologize for leaving Americans there, are you?
Not at all. Excuse me, and let me finish. And so, this is what I'm just about to say. It kills me how you're going to bash him, how Republicans are going to bash this guy, when it was okay. You were so fond with the agreement, the office, the agreement that Trump signed with them, and you're okay with the May 1st date that he set to leave, but didn't follow through with it because he's transparent, and you're okay with that, but you're not okay with the fact that a president finally doesn't matter the party, but a president finally got us out of this quagmire. And here's something else I heard. I heard a conservative soldier today say, when I hear people say that all this chaos that's been created, he says that tells me that those people have never been on a battlefield or in a war zone, because there's always going to be chaos, and there's no way any Republican or Democratic president could have gotten out with this type of chaos in this country. So now,
you think he did a good job on the withdrawal? Like that's a question that I would ask you or any Democrat. Do you think he did a good job with the withdrawal?
Yes.
So you think that he left the Blackhawks and the Humvees and the drones and billions of dollars of American weapons there for them to take over and use was okay?
So how are you? So you tell me then. I mean, you might be governor. So you tell me then. How do you propose that he would have gotten all that out, and Americans all at the same time? Tell me how to do. And remember, excuse me, and it's funny you make those faces, because again, what you guys don't talk about is in what Trump signed with them, he gave them arms. So half of the weaponry, your guy, the transparent dude, he gave that to him. So how in the hell? So now you want? Excuse me. Listen. Now you want my guy. Now you want these American soldiers to decipher which arms are the ones that Trump gave and the ones we should be taking away. That's bullshit, and that's not what you guys should be asking soldiers to do. We should be getting Americans out like we did. It's crazy that had Trump doing this, Dr. Jensen, you would be sitting there talking about what a great day it is for America. It is boiled down to politics, and you're playing politics because you think that a Democrat didn't do a good job when you thought how transparent Trump was, but it was okay with you that Trump signed that treaty with them. That was okay with you, and then the date he set to leave, that was okay with you as well.
You never asked me.
I'm asking you now.
You never asked me what I thought of our withdrawal. I hadn't commented on that, and I hadn't commented on President Trump's plan. But I mentioned that we left a tremendous amount of very expensive weaponry, and the reason it was there was because that was a part of our military action over there. But I think when you're leaving, the priority has to be on getting the lives out, getting everybody safe out. But I think then what you do is you stockpile and destroy the weaponry so that it can't be used against you or your allies.
But how do you again, Doctor?
They already did, though.
You're glossing over it. So how do we decipher when Trump gave them the weaponry? So how do we decipher which is what?
So
I'm asking Doctor though. How do we decipher? I mean, I know you think you got an answer. I'm asking you, how do we decipher when your transparent guy gave them the weaponry?
All we needed to do was take care of the weaponry that was under our control. That would have been a far cry greater than what we did do. We simply abandoned
and we did obtain and guard as much of the weaponry as we did. Are you guys talking about the fact that there was an outside attack outside of the
that's ISIS-K. That's not
okay.
Taliban.
So then, what are we talking about then? Because has the weaponry was it used against us yet?
Okay. So just to be clear on something, when we withdrew as fast as we did, because all of the intelligence, according to what has been released by the White House, is that they did not think that basically Afghanistan forces would fall that quickly. And so when all the equipment that got abandoned by the Afghan forces, that equipment was not able to be at all disabled. That was not what the United States was trying to do, because when we actually left the final points from Karzai Airport, we disabled a bunch of that weaponry. We're talking about, and what I believe Scott's talking about, is the weaponry that was left over that we quickly had to abandon when we withdrew our air support from Bagram Air Force Base. If you believe that Joe Biden did a great job on the withdrawal, and you're trying to marry that to whether or not we should have been in Afghanistan at this point, I think that the majority of Americans that supported what Trump did in signing that we were going to be out of Afghanistan That's what Joe Biden continued, and good for him. He actually pushed back the timeline, which, again, we should have been out of there by May, but Joe Biden pushed it back. That's on Joe Biden. So to say that Trump would have done this or would not have done this.
Wait a minute. So let me
just finish this point. Let me finish this point.
It's okay for us to, we should have left in May.
Yeah, we should have.
And so you don't think we'd have had this same problem because Trump?
No. You want to know what the difference is?
Oh, yeah. What's the difference?
As the Taliban was advancing and taking provincial capitals, which the agreement said that they would not do, a large group of men in the middle of the desert, Trump would have bombed the living shit out of them. That's what Trump would have done.
Okay.
Joe Biden didn't go after them. He waited until after the ISIS-K event that happened, okay? When that happened, and then we drone strike
because the Taliban,
people.
You do know the Taliban said that they would take care of those people,
and it was children.
Oh, well, it's casualties of war. Come on, give me a break.
And that's what happens, though. That's what happens when you have such a botched withdrawal.
Oh, it's botched, yeah.
And that's the problem. No one is sitting here. I mean, there might be some people that are like, I can't believe we got out of Afghanistan, but that road was already there. Trump had already said we're going to do this. We had every intention to believe that Biden was going to continue through with that promise and with that agreement. But what we're talking about is using your eyes, taking off the Biden glasses and saying, was this a good withdrawal? Did we see the people that should have got out get out? Did we have to start making concessions today?
Who didn't we see get out?
You said 200. That report is not even close.
Left there?
There's way more than 200 people.
Not.
Yes. And on probably one of your favorite shows,
there is
CNN.
Not.
Okay,
I'm an MSNBC by the way.
A woman called in to CNN and was saying, "I'm an American citizen. I tried to go. We didn't know this was the last flight out, and they told us to hold an umbrella, but they didn't let me in. And I'm trying to bring 9 other children with me. My point is." History, and this is what Dr. Jensen said earlier, history is going to tell us whether or not people like it. You look at Joe Biden's approval ratings, everybody feels that he botched this withdrawal. We're not talking about whether
Republicans.
It's way more than Republicans. Look at Joe Biden's approval ratings, man.
He's still higher than your guys ever been.
They're in the gutter. This quickly, it's because he messed
48% approval ratings in the gutter.
In the gutter.
When he's been over 50?
This soon.
Did your guy even get 50% in 4 freaking years?
He won the election.
He never got it.
He won the election, so he had
and he got his ass kicked in the re-election. Excuse me,
so he had to at least have 50% at some point.
Yeah, right. First of all, he did not. AK, bro, use a simple Google.
He never reached.
He is the only president to never have a 50% approval rating as long as they've been taking it. All you have to do, use your phone. It's a simple Google search. He's the only president.
No, it's not true.
No, it is true.
It depends on what polls you're looking at. I can show you polls.
I can show you polls where he was over 50%. What do you want to pull a Fox poll on your ass? We're talking about Rasmussen, all the regular polls.
Sure, that's fine. That's fine.
Doctor,
but there's plenty of polls that put him over 50%.
So again, you're sitting here talking. You're sitting here going to bash Joe Biden. But again, was it okay with you what Trump did?
In terms of what Trump did, when he left, at some point in time when you have a succession of presidency, the blame, the responsibility has to shift. If you go back to 1975, when in April we left Vietnam, Jerry Ford was president. He'd been president probably for, I would guess, less than a year. But that was still Jerry Ford's responsibility. That wasn't pinned on Richard Nixon because Jerry Ford, President Ford, had the ability to modify and tweak because he's the commander-in-chief. President Biden was inaugurated in January, and we're talking about something that happened 8 or 9 months later. President Biden, with his staff and his commanders and all the folks that he had to support him with, they had the chance to modify the plans. The May 1st date that President Trump might have highlighted or targeted, that was no longer binding because we have new commander-in-chief. So I think the basic question comes down, and I think we're sort of Monday morning quarterbacking, and that's fine.
Sure.
But I think that if we would ask ourselves, what are the people that are most in the know? What are they saying? And I think that we're seeing CNN and CNBC and Fox, and we're seeing a lot of Democratic higher-ups that were also very concerned that the overall operation had been botched. So I don't think Biden gets good scores on the withdrawal from Afghanistan. I think that people are glad that we're done with the 20-year war, but I think that most people would acknowledge that we left too many people there, And we had people literally grabbing onto an airplane and their body parts were removed from the wheel wells once the plane landed in other airports. This was a humiliating thing that made our Vietnam situation almost look less gross.
Oh, sure. Okay. Yeah, right. So name me a president that either was going into war, getting out of war, that was popular. Can you think of one?
Yeah.
Who?
George H.W. Bush with the Desert Storm.
I mean, it took 2 weeks. I mean, yeah. I mean, okay. With the exception of George, but
He named you. You asked him and he named you, man.
I mean, and we still okay.
Okay, how about FDR?
Oh, give me a break, dude. You weren't even born then.
Well,
You weren't even born then.
so you want me to name someone that was in my lifetime?
What about Reagan? How popular was Reagan? Or how popular was H.W.? I'm sorry, with W. How popular was Clinton? How popular was Nixon? How popular was Carter? How popular was Obama? How popular was Trump? Now,
I thought you asked a question about the popularity of a president after he pulled out of a war.
No, before you didn't listen. I mean, that's typical Republican. Entering or exiting a war? That was the question. Name me a president that was popular entering or exiting a war. In our lifetime, that's probably the only one, because he went in.
Which war did Clinton enter or exit?
Or when he bombed someone, or when he bombed or something like that.
I don't think Clinton entered or exited a war.
We bombed a lot of people while he was
Kosovo.
President, okay. We did some bombing. Was he popular for that?
I think this question is.
Was he popular for that? I don't think so. Okay, now let's go to your doctor, and COVID is rampant. My co-host recently had it. He's vaccinated, and it's boiling down to a lot of politics. Was what it comes down to. If you look at the numbers, a lot of black folks and minorities don't take COVID, won't get the vaccination because of a mistrust of government. A lot of high percentage of Republicans, although Donald Trump is vaccinated, won't get it because you've had your leaders poo-pooing the vaccinations. And
doctors and PhDs, for some reason, are also very highly unvaccinated.
I don't know many of them.
No. I'm just saying I think it was 4 weeks ago when the Atlantic did a story and they were looking at who are the unvaccinated, and it's PhD level and basically PhD and higher income folks are very unvaccinated.
That's not a cliche. It is a war with the unvaccinated. Your doctor, how do you feel about vaccinations? And you talked about Governor Walz maybe overreaching his power, which he did not.
Maybe. Oh, he definitely did.
He did not.
No, tyrant Walz.
He wanted to save folks. Again, you guys have been political, because if that had been Paul Lynch, you guys have been saying, oh, he's just saving everybody. Again, it boiled out of politics, but you guys want to be honest about that. So, I got a question. You're Governor Jensen. You're faced with this. What does Governor Jensen do?
I would make certain that people understand that the vaccine's a game changer.
Well, wait a minute. Let's talk about, he was governor prior to any vaccinations. So we were only hearing about vaccinations. Vaccination hadn't reached the states yet. So we got to talk about all that now.
So you want to start?
Don't talk about the easy part now.
You want to start at the beginning.
At the beginning.
Okay. So that would be March 17th is when the first lockdown went in place in 2020. And I think that all of Minnesota, as well as most of the country, was ready to get on board and do their part. Nobody wanted to be that person that didn't do their part. And so the two major foci were, let's make certain that we flatten the curve so that we don't overwhelm our hospital facilities.
Did he do that?
Yes.
Okay.
I think all of Minnesota and the governor collectively did that. And
thanks for your honest answer.
The lockdown, I think it was begun on March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. I think when the lockdown was extended and the, if you will, goalposts appeared to many to be moved, at that point in time, you would have seen a divergence in terms of how I would have dealt with it versus how Governor Walz dealt with it.
How so?
I think that he went ahead at that point in time and said, I'm going to determine arbitrarily, or my team, as to what businesses are safe and what ones are not safe, which ones are essential and which ones aren't. There was waffling that went on there. You couldn't get a haircut. For a while, you could do landscaping. Then the landscaping was taken off. Then it was put back on. I think that I would have been much more focused on local control. I would have had 87 counties consider their own given situation, because Hennepin County is so much different than Kitson County to the northwest of our state. So I think that this one-size-fits-all was a bad start. Then I think there were people that came forward to Governor Walz and said, you are in danger of being surrounded by an echo chamber. You're just hearing your own people say yes. You need to have some sort of spawn, if you will, another group that's more of your naysayers. And he declined doing that. And I know that there were people out there that are not politically motivated, but thought that they could help in terms of creating temporary quarters whereby people that had been in the hospital could convalesce a bit longer to make certain that they weren't being pipelined back into nursing homes until after they were no longer infectious. But that didn't happen. Many states did that, but we did not. We sort of duplicated what they did in New York so that we did introduce active disease back into our nursing homes. So I think there would have been a shift there, to be certain. And then I think as we moved forward and we started to do the masking, and I think it became so, this is the way we're going to do it. I signed the Great Barrington Declaration in October of 2020, which said what we should be doing is we should be having a laser focus on the people that are most vulnerable. We were already learning by then that countries and states that had chosen not to do a lockdown were flourishing and doing much better. Their economy was intact.
Well, what countries were this?
Sweden was one. Switzerland was another.
Yeah, they had low infection rates, doctor. Stop playing. They didn't have high infection rates like America did. So you can't compare the two. That's apples and oranges. Stop that, doctor.
So
they didn't have high infection rates like we did.
So we can't.
How do you compare that?
Anything that we compare that doesn't support your narrative is not. We can't use that.
Oh, so excuse me. Excuse me. A place that had low infection rates compared to a place that had higher. How the hell do you compare? Yes, doctor, you're a doctor for Pete's sake.
We're saying that
by
making these issues move forward, that's why they had lower infection rates.
That is not why they had lower infection rates.
That's what we're positing. That's not
why they had.
That's the theory.
The data points that people were sharing regarding Sweden were compared to neighboring countries. And if you remember back at that time when Sweden was doing quite well, one of the worst performing first world countries is Belgium. And Belgium is literally a matter of hundreds of miles away. So while, yes, there's an ocean separating us, Sweden, from the United States, there is not a great deal of land space separating Sweden from Belgium. And yet these were two sharply contrasting countries. So I think it's a valid comparison.
Yeah, right. So again, you think that the governor arbitrarily used his power to say that he was only going to protect a certain class or certain people?
I think what happened was there was no attention given to the collateral damage that was occurring. And I think that we realized fairly quickly, first, many things were learned in that first few months. One is that if we used ventilators like we normally did, we doubled the fatality rate from 40% to 80%. That was really important. And Minnesota was fortunate that we learned, because I think people were very much Johnny on the spot, paying attention, physicians, especially physicians in a lot of the larger hospitals that were taking care of so many COVID patients. We learned quickly, don't increase the pressure and force the air into the lungs. Instead, increase the concentration of oxygen and continue low flow. That saved lives. But I think the collateral damage was starting to mount up too, the mental illness, the number of people that weren't going to the hospital, the number of breast cancers that weren't being diagnosed, the number of chemotherapy treatments that were being skipped. All of these things were starting to pile up, but yet we still plowed onward as if there was one way to treat everything. So I think that's where I would have diverted. I would have leaned into the Minnesota citizens. I remember when the second lockdown came. I don't know if you remember, Jamar, but you could get a haircut during the second lockdown, but you couldn't during the first.
I got a haircut throughout the whole time.
Well, the way looking at your hair, I wouldn't be able to tell. Just saying. Well, but the bottom line is, the fact of that is, was that science, or was that just dealing behind backroom doors? And then if you look at the other thing that happened with the closing down in March of 2020, the ability for physicians to get their hydroxychloroquine prescriptions filled by pharmacists, Governor Walz shut that down. And then on August 12th, he rescinded that part of his order. He never explained that to the Minnesota people.
Well, probably because some idiot.
Why during the surge, he took hydroxychloroquine off the plate and then later on put it back in. So if it was a problem, then why did he put it back in?
I don't know. He's an idiot for putting it back in, because we had another idiot that ran the country that kind of screwed up whatever the hell it was.
Do you remember the Legionnaire's disease in 1976?
No, I'm only at the ripe age of 43.
Well, I thought you might have read a history book on that. Okay. Anyway, if you look at 1976, there were people leaving this convention in Philadelphia. They were going home, and within the first 24 to 48 hours, they were getting pneumonia and they were dying. Doctors desperately were trying to save their lives. We were pumping in IV fluids, IV antibiotics, using our big guns, and people kept dying. We didn't have a Tony Fauci. We didn't step in and wait for government to step in. We kept doing what we kept doing. And we tried some old-fashioned antibiotics, and we stumbled across one called erythromycin. And all of a sudden, the erythromycin, which we never would have guessed would have been the successful one, started saving lives. And boom, we stopped losing people to Legionnaire's pneumonia. That's what should have happened here. But instead, there was incursion and intrusion by bureaucrats, unelected people, politicians, and everybody else telling doctors and patients, you don't get to do what you've been doing for the last decades. We're going to step in and tell you what you can do and when you can do it.
What did the government tell? So wait a minute now. What did the government specifically come in and tell you as a doctor that you couldn't do to treat this patient, to save this patient's life?
They wouldn't fill my prescriptions. They wouldn't dispense the medicines.
What's
hydroxychloroquine?
Okay. Now, what's that?
I had a patient on the way over here today, took my prescription, went to the pharmacy. The pharmacy would not fill it. Today, that was a few hours ago. It's still happening. Pharmacies are scared. They're scared with, hydroxychloroquine is a very safe drug. My wife was on that for 15 years. And we're not even talking about using it long term. You're talking about hydroxychloroquine for 5 or 7 days. And if it improves things 50%, wouldn't that 50% be something you'd want available, Jamar, if it was you or your wife? To possibly cure her and keep her from dying of COVID?
What's the science behind it?
The science is that it's an immune modulator. It has antioxidant properties. It's a zinc ionophore, so it allows zinc to get into the cell more efficiently, which slows down viral replication. Those are scientific bases that we know and could help, but we weren't able to do that.
You know, the thing that's interesting to me and I want to ask you about, because this goes right into what you're saying. I just read a story today that there was a judge in, I believe it was Florida, or it might have been Ohio, but there's a judge, and a doctor prescribed ivermectin to this man that has a 30% probability of living, and the government stepped in. The county stepped in along with some hospital administrators and said, we are not going to give this. The woman went to court, and the judge ruled because she had a prescription. A doctor said, you can take this. The court said, we're going to go with what that doctor said. And there was all this pushback. But that, again, you know, the question I wanted to ask you, and I know we're running short on time, and I appreciate you being here with us. Off label. Well, I would say that before we started the show, you and I were kind of chatting, and my issue has been about figuring out what is the narrative, and then being able to use that lens of understanding when narratives are being created and any time that something doesn't fit the narrative. And Jamar gave a good point of when something doesn't fit the narrative, you know, you pull it out, you extract it, and you say, well, that's just an outlier there. That doesn't matter. So for you, in you know, it's going to be a two-part question. Number one, what made you want to run for governor? And number two, do you see that there's a narrative that has been created? I'm not saying for nefarious purposes. I'm just saying for the purposes of maybe their viewpoint of controlling people to try and help the situation. But do you see that there's narratives that are created, and anytime something challenges that narrative, that there's a lot of pushback? So a two-part question.
Well, first off, I never said I wanted to run for governor. I feel compelled to run for governor. This was not a bucket list thing for me. I think that two things happened in my life in a converging sort of fashion. One is my wife came through 4 major surgeries in a way that we could never have guessed. She feels better now than she has in a decade. That was so I live with a walking miracle every day.
Amen.
And I'm grateful for that. Thank you.
Amen.
So at the same time, COVID is hitting. And when they first decided to change the way we do death certificates, I raised my hand and said, hold it. I haven't done that for 35 years. Why are you asking me to do it now this way with COVID? We should not change the rules of the game. We should continue in a consistent fashion. And I expected that there would be an effort to correct what had been done. And people might say, hey, thanks, Dr. Jensen, for pointing that out. But I wasn't. I was vilified, demonized, and my license was investigated. And now it's under investigation 4 times. So I think that those were the things that said, Scott, You can't sit this one out. You can't get into the spectator seats. You've got to be on the field of battle. And so over a 6-month time of a lot of soul searching, Mary and I made the decision to do this. We're doing this because we think Minnesota needs to be healed. We're so much better than this because I'm absolutely convinced that I could sit here with Jamar for another 2 or 3 hours. And as we hammer through the issues, we're going to find a ton of agreement.
We might.
We are. I really believe. I mean, we might have 20%, 30% of the issues that we might disagree on, but I'm absolutely convinced that if we can let the better angels of our personality emerge, we can find that common ground. Now, the second thing is, I think to your second question, sir, I have always felt like there's this narrative that emerges, and I don't think it emerges necessarily because someone was plotting or scheming. Sometimes, perhaps, but for me, I've always been a bit of a skeptic. And so I try to provide context. And that's what I found that I was doing early on in this COVID, where my life changed. I mean, I feel like I'm having an out-of-body experience where people are saying, holy cow, Doc, you're brilliant. No, I'm not. I'm a contextual kind of guy. If I tell you that 3 million Americans die every year and that 650,000 die of heart disease every year and 600,000 die of cancer, and if all of a sudden we take that 650 of heart disease and 600 of cancer, drop both of those by 250,000 and say those are all COVID deaths, we're going to look at that data and compare year to year, and we're going to say, gee whiz, we must be approaching where we've solved cancer or solved heart disease, and we would have bastardized the data such that we wouldn't be able to learn so much. So I always felt like I was trying to provide context, and I meant to do it in the most honest fashion I could, but I've been ridiculed by, and I think one of the biggest failures during this entire COVID pandemic is not necessarily any specific politician. I think the medical profession has really failed. I think we've failed you. I think we've failed to be advocates for our patients.
Absolutely.
We're having doctors dismiss patients from their practice because the patient asked the wrong question or wanted the wrong medication or wouldn't get vaccinated. These are relationships that had been built on 10 or 20 years. It isn't about the doctor's political views. It's supposed to be about honoring the patient. It's a patient-centered healthcare system. This grieves me deeply that we have patients out there feeling literally abandoned by their doctors. So I think one of the legacy points of view from this whole pandemic is going to be, what did we do to the children in regards to collateral damage? And what did the medical profession do to everyday patients who simply wanted to have someone that they go have a conversation with, knowing that they would have an advocate, and it didn't happen?
No, you're right. I wish we had like 2 hours.
Seriously,
right? Because I would go so fast. Because you're absolutely right. First of all, AK and I say that a lot of times. We should be the Republican and the Democrat in every circle that can hammer things out, right?
Yeah.
Because as much as we yell and scream, we're still going to come out with a substantive plan that we're going to get something done with. And I appreciate the things that you're saying, that because sometimes I do think, no doubt, that it's bordering down or has come down to politics, depending on the politician. But I also think that it's easy for us to Monday morning quarterback what Governor Walz did or didn't do right when we weren't in that seat when this pandemic happened. I think that the one thing that you just said was so poignant was that I wanted to hear more pushback from doctors, from the medical profession. You didn't hear that. And I don't know if they were smothered by politicians. They probably were. They probably scared to have the license investigated and all of that. So, which is why we bring this to our last topic too. So I understand that as well too. But I do think there's always bureaucracy in all type of things, and that's unfortunate. And so I do think that he made some mistakes, but I think that I'd like to give every governor, no matter their party, his or her party, the benefit of the doubt that they are trying to save their state. But I do think if you look at certain politicians, the waffling that they do, sometimes before I start pointing my fingers, you think that this being a fluid situation, COVID is, because I think that our superintendent did a horrible job. He pitted families against teachers, which was unfair, right? Instead of just saying, look, this is a fluid situation. I don't have all the right answers. We're kind of going to fly by the seat of our pants. And I think people would respect that.
Be honest.
Yes. I think people, those politicians or those bureaucrats that say, I've got the right answers, this is how we're going to do it. That's what effed us up, because you thought you had the right answer. Instead of just saying, we're just going to see. And if, because this was an experiment on him, son.
If someone said to me, okay, Scott, point out 3 positives for Governor Walz and 3 negatives.
Please.
I'd say,
start with the positives first.
Yeah, I'm going to start with positives to be
Okay.
sure. I think every Minnesotan owes Governor Walz the due respect that every morning he woke up, whether it was 5 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning, he got out of bed. I'm going to guess that his hopes and prayers were that he would be able to make good decisions that day and that he would be able to do the best for Minnesota. I don't think there's any question about that. I think the second positive I would give him is that he had to run just an incredibly complex interlacing of communication across the state. You're talking counties, cities, social services, health services, as well as intersect with federal. And I think that he did that. And then the third thing is that he had to navigate a way through divided legislature, which we have the only one in the country, a Democratic House and a Republican Senate. And in that Democratic House and Republican Senate, there's a tremendous amount of animosity between the Republicans and the Republicans, Democrats and the Democrats.
Yeah.
I mean,
and then not to mention each other, right?
Yeah. So he did all those things. If someone said, what were his biggest 3 failings, I'd say, I think that it's so easy in politics to fall into this groupthink. You don't even realize it's happening. You surround yourself with people who sort of genuflect and sort of say yes sir or yes ma'am quite a lot because they want to keep their job and they want to sort of curry your favor. And I think that it's really important to make sure that you've got people who say, nope, you're wrong on this, Governor. You got to pull back. I think the second thing that I would have said is I think that we're so diverse Minnesota-wise, not just in terms of race, but in terms of the North is a totally different kind of industry than the South. And the greater Minnesota has so many different challenges than the urban. So I think that's another big thing is that there was a little bit one size fits all. And then I think the third thing would be that I think we forgot about the children. And I think that he inadvertently let the children absorb more of the hit. You mentioned the school district, parents and teachers. I would say we don't need to be masking 3-year-olds. And the notion of what we're doing to them and the fact that we won't know what we did to them for years and years down the road, I think that was a mistake. But to your earlier point, Jamar, anybody who thinks that Governor Walz has failed during the COVID pandemic should look at some of the polls that you and I both have looked at. His approval rating is over 50%. And he's been through a tremendously challenging pandemic. Ultimately, it may well not be the pandemic that's going to be his Achilles heel during the campaign. It may well be his lack of action in terms of dealing with the streets of Minneapolis and the rioting.
No, I think what Democrats are doing now is bearing themselves with black folks while continue to attack Senator Thompson, which honestly. It
you
looks
mean Representative Thompson.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Representative.
Elevated.
Yeah, no,
Already.
He's loving that. I don't think Democrats are looking at how that looks to us. It looks like a lynching that you continue to attack this guy when I think Munson said it best. Let's go back and look at the records of everybody for the last 12 and 20 years. Then let's expel you for that. The Texas abortion law. You're a doctor. You perform abortions?
No, I'm pro-life.
So you wouldn't?
I would not.
Okay. So you are aware of the new Texas law that just passed today?
Yes.
Okay. As a doctor, we're talking about doctors getting their license investigated and losing them. They've made it so stringent now that it is easy for me to sue you and the young lady that's going to get an abortion, and I have nothing to do with that abortion at all. They've made it easy so that any Tom, Dick, and Harry can now sue the doctor and the patient for the abortion. How do you feel about that?
I don't know the ins and outs of the Texas law.
That's the bottom line of it, doctor.
My understanding is that the Texas law still allows for abortion in accordance with, but it's changed in terms of 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
Yes.
Yeah. And most women, and you're a doctor, a lot of women don't even know that they're pregnant at 6 weeks. I've again, two-time loser.
Most women will have a strong suspicion that they're pregnant
Doctor,
at 5 weeks.
Doctor,
But
doctor,
I don't disagree
a
with
lot
you.
of come on now.
You said most. I challenge you on most.
Well, what do you practice at?
I'm a family practice. I've delivered 500 babies.
I ain't asked you that. I asked, where do you practice at?
Where?
Yeah, where?
In Minnesota.
You don't want to say your hospital?
No, I practice at Catalyst Medical Clinic.
Oh, okay, so is that a suburban hospital or something?
No, Catalyst Medical Clinic is a clinic I built.
Oh, pardon me. Well, I'm thinking about. I'm used to Hennepin County, one of these old, these old county hospitals, where again, a lot of women aren't even at 5 weeks. Even if a woman now discovers she's pregnant at 5 weeks, and even if she's thinking about, even in cases of rape and incest, there are no exceptions. So again, how is it okay for the government to? You don't like the mask mandate, but you're okay with a woman not having a right to choose. Explain it to me like my 3-year-old.
I think the issue is a sperm is 23 chromosomes. An egg is 23 chromosomes. When those two 23 chromosome haploid come together, you now have a 46 chromosome cell. And when they're dividing, you've got a life. So what Texas did was said, we're going to honor that life. Now, you may disagree with it, and I understand that. But the fact of the matter is, Texas said, we are going to take the strongest pro-life position we can. We have an organism, if you will, a zygote, ultimately developing relatively quickly into a fetus. And on the 22nd day, it has a heart beating.
Doctor,
we're going to consider that life.
Should a woman have a right to choose?
No.
No. So wait a minute. A woman shouldn't have a right to control her own body? You think that as a doctor you should control her body?
She can control her body in terms of
You think that you and the government should control her body?
I'm going to finish my sentence right now. She can control her body in terms of having an appendectomy, a hysterectomy. But if it comes to snuffing out a life, our position, our pro-life position, is that it's a life, and you can't snuff that out.
Oh, okay. Again, how's it convenient for you to not like the government to mandate masks, but it's okay for the government to mandate a woman not having an abortion? Doctor,
you're comparing a mask to a baby?
It's what government is. See, that's what I'm saying. You're actually great for politics, because you're being that right now. You're trying to spice the difference of it. When you know that there's not a difference, it's about government, which you know that government being in control of a woman's body, and then you don't like government being in control of telling you what to do. It's okay for government to tell you what to do, but government can tell that woman what to do. That is such bullshit, and you all know that. But Republicans, because you guys pick and choose.
It's not just Republicans, though. There are many Democrats who agree with me.
Yeah, there are.
There are many pro-life Democrats.
Yeah, Joe Manchin and Christian.
No, there's a lot more than that. I do have a question for you, though. And Dr. Jensen, I assume already that you are on the same point. The thing that Jamar refuses to answer, and I'm going to ask you, do you understand that for us, the woman's choice is also affecting, from our view, a secondary human being? So the woman can choose all the things she wants to do to her body, but she cannot choose what happens to another human life, and that is our perspective. Now, I understand that there are people that are on your side. You don't view that this, clump of cells, you don't view that as a human being. You view that as clump of cells. And so you view it that this fetus is just basically like an appendage. So the woman gets to choose what to do with her body. We view that as a completely separate person. So my question to you is, do you understand that we view that there are two human beings in that body, and that woman, we are saying, cannot choose what happens to the other human being in her body? She could choose whatever she wants to do to her own body, but this child is not her body. This is a separate individual that is a human being. So do you understand that when you try and equate the mask mandate, we're not saying that the woman can't choose to do it. She can put a barbell through her head if she wants to and do whatever. I mean, I might disagree with it, but we're saying you can't put a barbell through your child's head. It'd be the same thing. We as conservatives view that as a separate life, and that woman should not be able to kill and destroy that life because it's not something that's going to be convenient for her. So can you at least acknowledge that that's where we're coming from? Even if you disagree with it, can you acknowledge that we view that as two lives?
Do you see my face?
You don't acknowledge that we see it as two lives?
Let me jump in on this one real quick. And
I'm going to give you the same face, doctor.
Let's just go science fiction. Let's go forward.
Give you the same face.
And let's say that we had the technology that we can, even a very, very early pregnancy, we're able to successfully remove that pregnancy and put it in that fetus and put it into a different setting, whether it be in vitro, whether it be into a surrogate uterus. But let's say we could do that. And then the woman who didn't want the pregnancy would no longer be pregnant. If we could do that, do you think that woman should still be able to snuff out the life of that fetus that might have been put in a in vitro situation or in another uterus? Or would that life have standing in and of itself?
I don't know what you two don't get,
Okay.
but I'll say it slow for you. A woman has a right to choose what she does with her body.
What about her child's body?
And government has no place in deciding what she does with it. You guys are hypocrites because
You're not talking about the child.
Excuse me. It's who carries the child? You or me? You are the female.
The woman carries a secondary baby.
So again,
yes.
It's her right to choose
The life
what
of the child?
she does with her body.
That's your perspective, yes.
No. She has a right to choose. And again, you guys are hypocrites because again, you want government in when you want it in. But no, wait a minute. A woman should have a right to choose what she does with her body. But you know what? Don't you mandate that you save my life.
You refuse to acknowledge that we view that there's a secondary life.
So, and here's the other thing too, doctor. You're mad that the governor wants a 3-year-old to wear a mask.
I'm not mad. I'm very peaceful.
Okay, well, again, most of y'all are. Y'all complain, and when you complain, when you want to
disagree,
when you complain, one would assume you're mad about it. So you're complaining about a 3-year-old wearing a mask who cannot receive a vaccination. So if that 3-year-old gets sick, Governor,
Thank you.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah,
that could be Freudian.
God forbid. God forbid. If that 3-year-old gets sick with COVID, how likely is he or she to live? And how likely is he or she to spread it into her class while infecting others who are also around folks that can't get vaccinated?
99.997% likely that she would live.
Oh, yeah, okay, right.
Which is statistically, she has a 0% chance of dying.
So, stop.
There's been 3 people in the state of Minnesota between the ages 0 and 16 that have passed away out of all the people in Minnesota that have passed away from COVID. 3 individuals that are from 0 to 16. 3.
So that's not
that's okay. That's 99.999% or whatever survivability.
I think that the fact that if you're going to be a governor that decides that your party because your party says that they shouldn't be requiring masks or requiring vaccinations, then don't tell me that that's not politics, because that's most of the unvaccinated are minority.
Virtually all of my opinions and conclusions in regards to COVID have not been party driven. I would actually go the other way. I would say that I was a trailblazer, and I would say my party got behind me.
Oh, shit.
I think I was articulating my positions independent of because there was no Republican position on COVID or a pandemic.
When it first started,
I think that's one reason why I've been on the hot seat and why my license has been investigated 4 times and why I've been fact checked and by Associated Press, everything else, and kicked off of TikTok 2 or 3 times. Because I think that I have led on this issue, and I have tried to tell people, I might not always do what you want, but when I stand in the breach, I do stand in the breach, and I don't buckle.
Well, I like that.
I got just 2 last real quick things. So, number 1, just want to ask you, you're not saying that you would bar anybody that if they wanted to put a mask on their 3-year-old, you're just saying that you wouldn't force 3-year-olds to wear a mask, right?
That's exactly right.
So that's an important distinction. And then secondly, if people
he has to make it himself, doctor. You got to make that yourself.
Well, he's just saying he's against the idea that you force a child. But if you want to put a mask on your 3-year-old child, he's not saying you can't do that. But where do people go to find out more about your campaign, where you're going to be at to make contributions?
drscottjensen.com, drscottjensen.com. We'd love you to visit our website, and if there's some issues that we haven't covered, I'd like to really let us know. But I would like to say one thing, Jamar. You mentioned very early on, we didn't get a chance to turn back to it, but there's been a fair amount of, I think, and I don't want to really politicize it, but I think there's been a fair amount of unfair assumptions negatively impacting on minorities. You mentioned earlier, between the two of you, that there was a fair amount of the scientific elite not vaccinated. And then you had mentioned, Jamar, that there's a fair amount of minorities not vaccinated. And it has troubled me deeply that when the scientifically elite choose to not do it, it's because they thought it through and they didn't think they needed. But when the minorities make the same decision, too often there are public voices saying it's because they can't handle the science, they can't manage it. It's a hell of a put down, and it really grinds me that we're making these assumptions. I mean, I take care of lots of different kinds of people, and I like to just be colorblind because I don't really give a rat's ass what color a person's skin is. But it really is wrong when someone makes a decision and they're told that they're not capable or up to the task of making the decision based on the same high caliber kind of information that someone else in me. And I think that we've got to rise up together, Jamar, and say, don't do that.
Listen, I'm with you. And so your campaign, I know, listen, we got to go. Damn.
It goes so fast, man.
It does. Let me just ask this, though. I know you're in the infancy stages of building your campaign, but do you have any minorities, specifically, do you have any black folks in position on your team? Sounds like a no.
No, we don't.
Sounds like a no.
We have like a half a dozen people, and we've got minorities,
and not
we don't
just
have any black.
Not just little bitty peons. I mean, in positions, strategists, campaign manager,
let me tell
communications.
We don't have a communications person. I do almost all that with my team. We have like 5 people.
You know what they say about a guy that represents himself as a lawyer, though,
5
right?
people, man.
Yeah. I mean, I literally I connect with.
So if you're doing communications by yourself,
and my team, I said,
okay,
the team is way smarter than me, but no, I
nobody black.
Not out of those 5, no.
I mean, I think it's fair. If there's 5 people and
ain't none of them black,
it's not to say that he doesn't want someone that's black.
Shit, you hired him. So if you wanted somebody black, you would have hired somebody black, doctor. So you got to work on that.
No, I don't have a team of 5 that are hired. Not everybody on our team is being paid.
That's it, doctor. Stop. Oh my God, you are ready for politics and you don't even know it. You are ready.
I am ready for you again, Jamar.
Yes,
you're going to have me back. We're going to have to do this again.
Have you back.
Because I want you to know I let you go. I let you off easy tonight.
That's great. Thank you so much.
I love it. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Scott Jensen, please go to his website and contribute and do whatever you can do to help this guy win if that's who you believe in. Not if you're a Democrat, but help this guy win. And if you're tired of Governor Walz, this might be your guy. Thank you, Dr. Jensen. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jamar.
I love it. No, but I love pushback like that. Those you don't want weaselly candidates like we've had on here before that just ice skating, don't have real answers, and it's not pushback, but just giving you like, no, this is what I would do, this is how we would do it. And so I always appreciate that, and it makes me respect Republican candidates or any candidates, but Democrats are kind of because I bite, I guess.
Yeah, man, we went way over. Yes. We appreciate everybody stuck around hanging out. Make sure that you head over to anchor.fm/BRBD, catch the podcast. Make sure to share this video. Click on the follow button if you like our page. That's the best way for you to get notifications because Facebook's been changing a lot of their algorithms. But thank you for joining the show.
I had so many more questions.
Great to have you on, and we'll definitely have you back.
I'm Jamar Nelson.
I'm AK Kamara.
This has been another week of Black Republican, Black Democrat. Check us out next week.
Peace.